Let me tell you a quick story about Star, the brand new co-host of Everyday Struggle. A couple of years ago, I was sending out emails to people in old media and new media, just trying to connect with them and see what people I could reach, who I could maybe make content with, or who I could just get to know just to build relationships with them. Star was one of those people that I got in contact with, and we exchanged several emails until I finally got him on the phone. It wasn't even a minute into the conversation when Star had asked me, have I contributed to his website? Have I donated any money? I told him, no, I haven't. And he said, and I quote, well, good day, sir. We'll talk some other time until you do so. And he hung up the phone on me. I have another story. Years before that, maybe 7, 8, 10 years ago, when Star was on terrestrial radio, when he was on Power 105, Star put out a book. He put out a book called Objective Hate. This was a book that was his life's philosophy, which is something that I it's escaped my mind, the details of it. So I'm not going to butcher it by trying to run it by you. But I bought this book because I wanted to support Star, and he was doing a signing at a lounge in New York City. I went to the lounge and I had gotten there late, and it seems like everybody was on their way out. And I spoke to one of the co-hosts at the time of the show, who is basically Star's assistant. And I told him, hey, I'd like to get a book. Would Star be able to sign it for me? So the guy then replies and says, oh, believe me, if you're here to buy a book, he will make time for you. So I got the book. Star signed it. I told him a couple things, and he was like, well, that's great. And then I went about my way. The reason why I'm giving you these two stories is because you have to understand that while you're watching Star on Everyday Struggle, you might feel that he's imposing himself on DJ Academics. You might feel that he's against DJ Academics. You might even think that he hates DJ Academics. But I'm here to tell you that this is a philosophy that he has adopted long before. When you were watching that very first show that he was featured on Monday, you saw a few times where he came at Academics as far as Academics' intentions. He came at Academics about the Fredo Santana issue. He came at Academics about being hyped about Drake mentioning him on a record. He's coming at him because this is a guy who on terrestrial radio would talk about Ayn Rand. Now, Ayn Rand was a Russian philosopher. Now, she was a lady who her basic philosophy in life is that altruism does not exist. Altruism, which is basically doing things selflessly. You say that you love your mother because you have all the love in your heart, and it's unconditional because of how you feel for your mother. It has nothing to do with your own self-preservation. Now, Ayn Rand argues that there is no way that a human being can be totally selfless. The ultimate virtue of a human being is to be selfish because your well-being is what you ultimately care about the most. So Ayn Rand's philosophy was all about being selfish. She wrote two famous books, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged are like Republican manifestos. They are basically Bibles for the right wing. Now, he questions him because he believes that through all of Academics' his moves in now talking about artists that he is now spending time with in studios, he's questioning that he's trying to come across like he's their friend, when I think Star wants him to admit that he's doing this for his own good and that he's selfish. He's also questioning whether Academics can be objective, whether Academics can be a good, quote unquote, journalist while hanging out with the very same people that he is talking about.
I'm on the phone with somebody right now who I was going to have on the line. Yeah, on the line. And I don't necessarily want to sit down and talk with everybody. But now there seems to be a problem. Oh, yeah, and I clearly laid out yesterday how this was going to happen. I don't have to give this microphone time or airtime to any of you out there. Let's be clear on that. I don't need you. Need you for nothing. We ain't cool. We ain't never did nothing together. Let's not get it twisted. That's why I don't play the soul brother handshake game. And see you out in the parties, out in the streets. We ain't cool. This is business. My business. You know?
Yeah.
F you, and F your hood. F the block you rep, nigga.
You're dealing with somebody who was a part of old media. You're dealing with somebody who has something very similar to Joe Budden and brings something to the plate that Joe brought to the plate. And that's dealing and existing within the machine prior to everyday struggle and coming out of the other side with a sense of bitterness, with a sense of frustration, which is what will make good content, which is what will make passionate and intense discussions. You don't want to watch a show where somebody who was formerly of old media or somebody who was an artist and who feels great about the situation, because then they're not going to challenge the person who was across from them. They'll just simply say, well, that's how you see it. I had good experiences with the industry and I think it's great. You'll stop watching Everyday Struggle immediately. I told you guys this a couple of weeks ago when I told you that Academics has to be in there with a total disagreeable personality. That's exactly what Complex brought to the table. They brought somebody who is going to challenge Academics constantly, as Joe did, but people want to pretend like Joe Budden was 1 in a million. Like it's just not possible to replace Joe. Because as I said, audiences are fickle. You got used to a certain dynamic and a certain product, and now that it's changed, you hate it. But people can dislike the show all they want. They're still going to watch. People have this idea that if you watch a show, you're watching it because you want to like the people in the show. That's not true at all. You can watch a show for several different reasons. And if you hate watch the show, you're still watching the show. People didn't like Joe after the Little Yachty incident. They said Joe was too negative. They said he was just an old head and he was bitter. They grew to like Joe because they got to know Joe a little better. Well, now you're dealing with somebody who's a bit older than Joe, a bit more bitter, and this is his product. This is what he does. And since he's coming from an old form of the music industry, he's going to bring exactly what Joe brought, but he's bringing it from a different perspective. Joe had a lot of things against record labels. Well, Star has a lot of things against terrestrial radio. And he's very open with these opinions. He doesn't hold back. So this idea that he's coming at Academics because he's overcompensating and he's trying to be Joe, this is always who he's been. And as a matter of fact, you can make the argument and say that he influenced Joe Budden, that he influenced Charlemagne the God. So what you're dealing with here is somebody who is the grandfather of this provocateur style, of this trolling style. And it's been that very same provocateur style that's gotten Star in trouble time and time again. He once had a beef with DJ Envy, and he ended up losing his job at the radio station because he threatened Envy's daughter live on air. Also at the time of Aaliyah's death, who we all know died in a plane crash, Star played an audio of a plane crashing with a woman screaming live on air. So Star's always been about himself. He's never really cared about others because this whole radio personality thing was always a game for him. That's why when Academics asked him if he likes hip hop, he's never really liked hip hop. He's considered himself a vulture. He admits to being a culture vulture of hip hop. On to the interviewing thing, which I think is very interesting because he went at Academics over the idea of, once again, talking to people for long periods of time because he interviewed XXXTentacion for 3 hours, and that's more of a conversation more than an interview. Star has this view towards interviews that's very different from everyone else. You could consider that somebody like Charlemagne the God, his main loyalty when he is interviewing people is to the audience. When he interviews people, he asks cutting questions. He's He's very obsessive about being consistent about the very same tone that he's used when that person wasn't in the room. So he is trying to dig out some truth out of this situation, out of this interview. Somebody who's on the extreme point of that, like say a Zane Lowe or a DJ Academics, is more of an agreeable person. Their loyalty is completely to the artist. They will ask fluff questions. They don't want to burn the bridge between them and the artist. And you're never going to get any controversy out of a conversation with them. Star's loyalty is to himself. He does not like doing interviews. And when he does do interviews, he already has an axe to grind. There's already something that bothers him about the fact that he had to get somebody on his platform to talk about what they are going to do. Because again, this really has nothing to do with it doesn't serve his selfish nature. It really doesn't behoove him to help anyone else or to really extend an olive branch of help towards an artist.
We don't ride together. And you got to lay it down like that sometimes. A lot of cats get it twisted. Yo, we trying to eat with you. Yeah, we eat, nigga. Get a pistol and feed your family, bitch ass. F out my face. The same rules apply. Yeah, sometimes I have to get like this, you know?
One last thing to remember about everyday struggle, and it's the idea of us against them. And that is what puts the audience on your side. YouTubers employ a tactic that's this us against them dynamic where they try to make YouTube seem like they're the big bad wolf and that their channel's been terminated or that YouTube is harassing them with emails, and all this may be true. But a YouTube personality can use that to their advantage because that will make the crowd be more on their side because now they have an enemy. They have YouTube to revolt against, and that makes the fan base a lot more stronger. This happened on Everyday Struggle with the Migos incident. The Migos incident drew you closer to Joe Budden because if you hated him, well, it's not like you were going to get any conversation out of the Migos. It's not like Migos were going to give you any interesting bit of content the next morning. It was going to be Joe explaining the situation and laughing about the situation, and you went through it with him and with Academics. So that's what made the dynamic and molded the dynamic and put it back together after the Yachty incident broke it apart. So that's one thing to remember. If this is going to work, does it need one of those moments? Or can the show just carry out by being good all on its own? What do you guys think about the situation? Do you think Everyday Struggle is going to get better? Do you still believe in no Joe, no show? Please let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you guys next time.
That's what I give you, remember? For you and your whore. And your filthy ass kids. Stop crying because you can't put them in private school, bitch ass. Whoever. I feel better now.
Oh, okay, good.
I thought you would.
It's like therapy.